What I'm wanting to talk tonight about tonight, I'm all tongue twisted tonight, but is limits. And I got to noticing how people limit themselves. We limit ourselves in how we love others. If this person doesn't love me this much, I'm only going to love them this much.
Yeah.
If this person is only this kind to me, I'm only going to be this kind to them. I'm not going to show this person respect until they show me respect. We limit ourselves in all these things that should be limitless. Uh, Forgiveness, we limit how many times we forgive somebody.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to do that.
Yeah. 70 times 7 is not meant to be a limit.
Right.
It was meant to be, you just keep on forgiving.
It was meant to be like if somebody's telling a story and they over exaggerate something to give it a kind of more of an infinite
Yeah. Well,
definition.
and numbers meant something to uh, the Hebrews, to the Jews. The 12 had a definitive meaning for them.
Right.
7 had a definitive meaning. It meant complete.
Right. And I found out recently, you're talking about the numbers meaning, um, I didn't realize that their language was alphanumeric, as basically the old Hebrew language. There was a lot of it that was often, or the Greek language.
Well, okay, so all of them were. So the idea of having numbers that was separate um from the letters didn't come about until the Arabic numeral system, which was 800 to 1000 AD, somewhere in there. I don't know the exact history, but
Right.
all of the old uh, symbols, they were numbered. So A was one, or whatever, or a leaf in Hebrew, a leaf, and alpha is one.
Right. But the one I was reading about was how they had numbers that actually meant words, or that they used for words too. Also, like in the old Hebrew, if you look it up, whenever they're talking about like the number of the number of the beast is a word repeated 3 times. That's where we get the three numbers. And in the old Hebrew time, like we read in the Bible where they say holy, 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 when they said it 3 times, that meant perfect holiness. So 666 is the number of man, 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 meaning holy man without the spirit. So then I looked into it farther and was researching how would they number a follower of Christ, or whatever what they would call him back then, and it was 677. And the 7 7, which we got the sevens in there again, meant man, God, God.
Hmm.
So to be a man is recognition of being a man, but the 7 and the 7, the God and God, showed the surrender to God and the relationship with God. So you couldn't be. It says you can't be perfectly righteous, which we knew that because you've always got the 1 6 in there, the man. So, um, but I was looking at that and it kind of blew my mind, because then I'm thinking about, like you said, 7 meant something in the Bible. They're using 7 all the time, and then find out that there is at least one context in the old Hebrew language where they use the number 7 as a designation for God.
Yeah.
So, um,
Right, that's where the idea of complete comes from.
right.
So, yeah, you're right.
But
I don't know a whole lot about and I I'm not into numerology or anything like that, but I know that I know enough about the numbers to that there was meaning in the numbers, and we have to look at that in the context of everything we read in the Bible.
right. Well, these limits that I was talking about, and I have to admit that I had a pretty rough start to my day today. I had one of those days at work where we got a couple that's younger, that's in a little bit higher positions, and you talk about speaking disrespectful to people. I mean, so normally when I go out there, I just let it go in one ear and out the other and just do my job.
Mm-hmm.
Today was one of those days where I was really wanting to place a limit.
Yeah.
Uh, Matter of fact, my stomach wasn't feeling all that well anyway, and then having to deal with that on top of that, I ended up using some of my sick time and leaving about 4 hours early. And my boss wasn't there, but I texted him and I said, I'm putting in my time. I'm going to the house. He said, okay, just make sure you have enough time. So I did. So I had to come home and get the Bible app out and sit there and refocus myself. And
Yeah.
but it really put limits into perspective for me. And when we limit ourselves, we're closing ourselves off to all these possibilities that are out there. And I know people, well, let's just do this. Let's go to the verse that, and I'm not exactly sure if it's an actual verse in the Bible, but all things are possible through Christ.
Yeah, that's in the Bible.
It's an actual, okay, there was a version of that people would use that wasn't in the Bible, and I can't remember what it was. But anyway, that phrase right there itself, all things are possible through Christ. Doesn't that sound like, doesn't that kind of sound like Jesus telling us to not put limits on ourselves in a way?
In a way. Yeah, it by the way, it comes from Mark 9:23, and it says, Jesus said unto him, if thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. So that was the King James Version, but
Right.
that's just what popped up when I did the search.
Well, I like that you read the King James Version, because my mom likes the King James Version. The New King James Version changes a few too many words for her. She doesn't really care for it.
On that one, it probably just says believes, to him who believes.
Right.
I doubt that changes it too much.
But anyway, and I had some other notes here real quick. I just had some little 1 or 2 word things. Okay.
And by the way, that's the passage where the guy says, "Lord, I believe, help my unbelief."
Right.
Where he wanted his son healed. So
I started this out wrong according to my notes, but like I said, it's warm. I've had a rough start to my day. I'm just now getting my head back straight. But when I was talking about limits, I was going to put it in the terms of how we set personal limits for ourselves and how the world sets limits on us also. And when they do this is the interesting thing. It leads to misdirection. They put limits on it that misdirect us towards the wrong pathways and stuff, which leads back to deception, which we talked about that one before. And leads to the little things. I don't know exactly where I'm trying to go with that one. I have really lost my train of thought tonight. I had something really solid set down.
How about I throw in something here
Let's
that I'm thinking
go.
about it? So, it's I think that we put limits on us sometimes in a inappropriate way, but limits can also be a good thing. I'm getting older and I need to limit what I do. Last night I do martial arts for those that don't know, and I'm in a heat in a building that doesn't really warm up very or doesn't cool down very well. So it's hot.
Like this room.
And yeah, and I've got a karate uniform on over my other clothes. So there's a lot of clothing, and then I've got gear on, and I'm sparring a bunch of people. And so, I was a little tired, and I probably went a little too far. And that's not unusual for me because I tend to do too much for all my conditions. The point is that we do the same thing with other things too, whether it be alcohol for some people or whether it be food for some people, whatever it is that may be the problem, we sometimes we need limits, so there is a good thing, there's a wisdom in having limits, but at the same time, what this guy is saying here to Jesus, we put limits on ourselves about doing God's work. And
Right.
here's the thing, God doesn't have a limit.
Right.
There's nothing there. He can do anything. If God created this universe, he can do whatever he wants. I heard a story about a guy that he had something told him he had to go do something. He had to, well, and I'll just tell you who it is. It's Lee Strobel, who wrote The Case for Christ, The Case for a bunch. He did a bunch of the ones that are The Case for something. And anyway, Lee Strobel, right after he became a Christian, and this is before he wrote any of his books or anything, he went to his boss, who was a hardcore atheist, and he don't know why, but he just felt like he had to go in there and tell his boss and invite him to Easter services at his church. So he does. And his boss says, "What are you doing coming in here and telling me about this? You know I'm an atheist. What are you doing? This is a bunch of nonsense." And as far as he knows, his boss never became a Christian. But what he didn't know is that there was a guy that was on his hands and knees replacing tile in the room on the other side of a desk that he couldn't see. So the whole time that he's sitting there telling his boss this, he's actually talking to the other guy. That other guy gets up afterwards, takes his family to church, and the whole bunch of them get saved.
Oh, wow.
So, we don't we don't know what's going to, and there's a lot more to the story, but that's the shortened
Right.
version of it. We don't know what's going to happen, and we put limits on ourselves and our ability, like going and talking to this guy that's an atheist. Why in the world would I want to do
Right.
that? Nothing's going to happen.
Right.
We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know who's going to be listening. We don't know who's going to be around to hear what we have to say or to watch us. And so we put these limits on us, and it's also like healing, okay? Let's just be honest here. Who here hasn't asked for God to heal somebody and in the same breath be thinking that it's not going to happen?
I think that would be very common because of the limits we put on
Because of the limits we put on ourselves.
the limits we put on our ability to communicate with God or something like that. And if people think there's a limit on communicating with God,
Right. And there's, who knows who's going to be listening to any of this?
right,
Who knows? But here, I'm here to tell you whatever it is that's going on in your life, whatever you might be going through, whether it's emotional or it's physical or
Work
spiritual,
related.
whatever it may be, do not put a limit on God because He could do anything.
Right. And that's, we see the, unfortunately, see the limit being put on, well, okay, let me take that, rephrase this. We worship a lot of people once a week on Sunday. A lot of people, that's the only time they go to church and worship. You're putting a limit on God.
Yeah.
If that's the only time you worship Him is on Sunday, you're putting a limit on Him.
Right.
If you're not worshiping Him on your own throughout the week, you're placing a limit that doesn't need to be there.
Or praying.
Praying, exactly.
You know, some people will think, and I'm not saying that I know anybody that does this, but they will think, okay, in order to pray, I've got to go to my place that I pray, or I've got to be in church to pray. I got to do all these things. I honestly can tell you that one of the greatest prayers I've ever prayed happened going down the road while I was driving. Okay. You know, because God just reached down and helped me. And so we don't have to, we don't have to be in it. Prayer is just communicating with God.
Where I was moved to rededicate was driving down the road.
There you go.
And like I tell people, they'll talk about prayer, and I tell them all the time, because Christianity, regardless of what people think about it, Christianity is about relationships. It's about your relationship with the Father in heaven. It's about your relationship with the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And if people don't want to believe in the Trinity, let me just put it this way: it's laid out in the Bible, without even saying anything about the Trinity. In the Old Testament, you have God said. In the New Testament, in the Gospels, you have Jesus said.
Yeah.
After the book of Acts, you have the Holy Spirit moved. It laid the Trinity out for them right there. But anyway, they want to look at Christianity as rules and things that they can't do and things they have to give up. It's a relationship. That's why my prayers to the average person probably wouldn't sound like a prayer. They would sound like I'm having a conversation with my dad, because that's how I view it.
Yeah.
I'm driving down the road. I'm having a conversation with my Father in heaven. So, for me, it's a lot more personal that way, and I think that I don't really think that He's going to require us to do a formal prayer every time we pray or something like that. I think He wants us to come to Him, because it says, the Bible says, stay in constant prayer.
Yeah. Pray continually.
Okay, well, you can't be in your place on your knees with your eyes closed continually all day long.
Right.
So when He says pray continually, He's talking about even if it's in your head while you're working your job, when you're driving down the road, when you're sitting at a sporting event, whatever. And I know a lot of people do that. They pray for their team to win like crazy at sporting events. So I know a lot of people that's always saying that. They're like, we got a big game tonight. Pray for the team. Like God has stakes in that game or something. But
Well, and he could.
he very, yeah.
You know, there's a story, and I don't know all the details, but somebody can look this up. But there's a story that John MacArthur's grandson was at a football game, and they needed a field goal to go into overtime. Okay, and so somebody, I think his dad, not, I don't think it was John MacArthur, but somebody prayed that he would make this field goal and put it into overtime. And he kicked like a 50 some yard field goal or 60. I mean, something crazy for a high schooler, and made the field goal, put it into overtime. Well, the thing that happened was there was in just right, not very far from there was a large wreck. And it would have been everybody there that was at
Wow.
the game would have been involved in the mess of that, and that whole large wreck would have been twice as bad if the game had not went into overtime.
Wow.
I There are things like that. So let me just say that sometimes God is in those kinds of things, and yeah, not always, but God does have a stake in everything. We just have to remember that, because sometimes there's
Okay.
circumstances.
I will concede that God would have an interest in the sporting event at that point. I will concede that. I won't concede that God has an interest in the sporting event because you have $50 on
Oh, no, no, that's a different
it.
story.
So, um,
I don't do any sports betting.
I don't either.
Just to let you know, I don't do any betting at all. I'm
Now
not.
I use that. I have a FanDuel uh, subscription, FanDuel Oklahoma
Hmm.
subscription, but that's just because that's the only way I can watch the Thunder games whenever they're playing a lot of times. I
Yeah,
never get on the site and place any type of bet or anything like that. I think it's dumb.
yeah. I
Uh,
I think we our group had a March Madness bracket thing set up, but the only thing we won was bragging rights, so it wasn't
right.
like money was exchanged or anything.
But yeah, all of these going on to that limit thing, we're limiting the possibilities. The story I told you about the Pharaoh, uh, his little blue Bible, how a preacher brought it to him, not even knowing him and stuff like that. I think in some shape, form, or fashion, he was opening up his limits, and that's what made that possible. When he was talking about he was wanting to read the whole Bible and he was wanting to get back into, his Christian roots and stuff like that, he was
Yeah,
taking those limits off. And then next thing you know, this miraculous type of thing happens where this guy just shows up with the exact Bible he was wanting to go get, bookmarked right to the place where he left off in his Bible app.
yeah,
So
yeah, and we hear people coming to the faith in situations like this where they're they're just opening up to the possibility. Who's to say they're even they're not? In other words, when I say there, maybe there are limits, but they're opening up to the possibility that there
right,
might be a God. And so they'll say something like, God, would you reveal yourself to me? And
give me a sign.
well, I didn't say give me a sign. That's a
I
different thing. Okay.
just
But we know that people have gotten saved through things like that, by just honestly opening up and saying, God, I, I want to believe, or something. And there's a truth that's miraculous in that sense. Uh, I didn't ask God for a sign. I just said, Lord, please save
right,
me. And I got a sign, okay?
right.
Because God came down, and uh, the Holy Spirit filled me, and I knew I was saved. There was no doubt. It was a miraculous event.
I said that because I was thinking of a funny little skit thing I seen somewhere. I can't remember where it was, but these two guys are outside fishing, and this storm comes up, and they're on the bank fishing, so they're next to a road, and it starts blowing real hard, and he's like, oh, and one guy starts praying, God, let the storm, you know, ease up just a little bit so we can catch a couple more fish like that. And this other guy says, what are you praying to an imaginary being for? He said, I'm not. And he said, okay, God, if you're real, give me a sign about that time the wind picks up and the stop sign goes, poof, smacks the guy right upside the head and knocks him out. He said, there's your sign. And it was just a couple rednecks that get out there and make little videos like that, and it was hilarious. But
That's pretty good.
um, that's one of those things God could do. If you're being smart aleck about it when you ask for a sign, He might just hit you upside the head with a sign. So,
Yeah.
but like I said, the day I had today, I found out that Christians are not exempt to the putting limits on ourselves. So, um, I know there's been instances where I'll start attempting to do something, and it's so frustrating that it looks like, oh, then, well, this tool doesn't work. This tool doesn't work. Oh, this is just impossible, and then walk away from it.
I want to say this, and it's kind of the other side of this. Um, there's a Bible verse out of Romans that talks about that all things work together for the good of those who love God.
Right.
Okay. And sometimes we will kind of twist that all things work together for our good. Okay. Or we'll also twist in another verse with that talks about that God won't give us any temptation that we can't handle. And the thing we have to remember there is that this is a temptation. It's not talking about things necessarily, because God could give us more than we can handle. I mean,
I
that
think it
could
says
happen.
He will give us more than we can handle, so that we have to learn to rely on God.
And that, I think, is the thing. I mean, there are people that go through horrendous things
Right.
and maybe even die from it, and yet, God is real. I just read this and I didn't realize this, and I don't know if you knew this, but gosh, the Chinese missionary, that the Chariots of Fire guy, what is his name?
I cannot.
I can't think of his name. Chariots of Fire.
That's one good thing about having the computers and
Yeah,
tablets
we
here.
can look it up. Little, something little.
I don't know if you just pull up Chariot of Fire.
Eric Liddell, not Little, Liddell.
Oh, okay. He's right on the.
Yeah, Eric Liddell. Okay, so Eric Liddell, after the whole Chariots of Fire thing that happened, he went to China and became a missionary. Do you know what happened to him?
I do not.
Okay, this was the 20s when it happened, when he went to the Olympics. In 1945, about a month before the people in China were liberated from the Japanese
Emperor.
the Japanese prisoners of war were
Oh, okay,
released.
gotcha.
So before the prisoners of war was released, before they made it to the camps and was able to get everybody released, about a month before all that happened, so it was like June or July, something like that, he died in a prison camp during World War II. He was 47 years old or 40 something years old.
Wow.
Here's this Olympic medal winner and, great Chinese missionary, and then he dies. But here's the thing that we don't know, that he prayed every day for everybody in that camp. He lifted them up and gave them encouragement, every one of them. And he may have died, but he also sailed the course that God had set for him.
Right.
And so, we think that this is horrible tragedy, and it is. But God used him for all these great things.
Right.
And still I mean, 40s, in the 40s, you're still in the prime of your life, or most things like that. I mean, he may not have been a runner anymore, but for a missionary, that's
Right.
the prime of your life, to be a missionary. And he died there.
Man.
And it's not talked about. Nobody talks about how he died there in a POW camp.
Right. Well, I don't think that everybody thinks it, but I think that a lot of people do. That Christians just that Christianity's supposed to be easy. That it's supposed to be,
Healthy and wealthy.
yeah, healthy, wealthy, and wise.
There you go.
The old saying that you're not supposed to have any struggles. Everything's supposed to be provided. Now, God will provide.
Yeah.
You'll always find a way, but it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, it's not easy for me.
You're going to have trying times, just like I had at work today.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, not only that, but the AC being out in my Jeep. So I've been driving in the heat all week long. So I'm
Right.
exhausted from the heat draining my energy on the way on my 42-mile one-way commute. So
Yeah.
one way in the heat, the other way in the heat. Um, it's not easy. But the only thing I can really say about it is it's worth it, because without coming to church and having a supportive church family, without having my scriptures that I read every day, without the prayers I say back and forth on the way to work and everything like that in the car, it would be twice as bad,
Yeah.
because I would just be angry. I would be when I got to work the first time somebody just said just the slightest little wrong thing to me, I would have blown up on them. And like today, even though I was having a trying time, I was close. I was close to blowing up on somebody, but I said, well, I got time that I can use to leave work early. I'm going to text the boss. He's not here today. He was on vacation. I said, I'm going to text him and talk to him for a minute when I'm on my lunch break. And he said, yeah, use your time and go home. So I put in my time and went home. So,
Yeah.
Christians don't have it easy. Matter of fact, in a lot of ways, we have it a little more difficult.
Yeah, we do. And some of us have it more difficult than others. I don't know how many, I've met hundreds of different pastors and Christians, thousands of different Christians. And all of them have, not all of them, but a lot of them have difficulties they overcome.
Right.
I may look like, I'm in my 50s, and I might look like I'm in pretty good health for my 50s, but I take enough pills for the health issues I got going on that I think I keep my pharmacist in business.
You're putting these kids through college.
Yeah. So
My wife's about the same way. There's two medicine cabinets at the house that's completely full, because she has allergies of this and allergies of that, and then she's got this and she's got that. So she has a lot of health things that she struggles with that I wish she didn't have to, but
yeah,
that's life.
yeah,
Life happens, and for those of them that think that, well, they'll say that's pretty good. You're a Christian, and all these health things are happening to you and stuff like this, all these bad things, and they'll use that. They'll say, well, that's why I don't go to church. That's why I don't believe, because if it was all good, he wouldn't let bad things happen. At the same time, if bad things didn't happen, then first of all, we wouldn't have anything to gauge what was good. If there was no bad, how would we know what was good?
yeah,
Second of all, if everything was good, then nobody would, feel like they needed God. it would cause this massive shift away from God. So bad things happening is basically a way of God keeping us humble, keeping our humility alive. Because if you think you're getting too high and mighty and stuff like that, trust me, something's right around the corner that's going to humble you pretty quick.
Yeah.
So this, like I said, my issue with my air conditioner and stuff like that in my Jeep, that's been a humbling thing because we've had a super scorching couple of weeks here.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
My air conditioner did not keep up today toward the afternoon. It was getting really hot in my office.
well, I had one of those little cold packs that you could put on your neck. So I put it in one of the freezers at work, and I was like, well, on the way home, I'll put this on my neck. It'll keep me cool on the way home. The thing melted on the walk across the parking lot.
Yeah.
By the time I got to the parking lot, it was completely melted, and there was a little bit of cold to it for the first couple of miles, but then it was just like having something sitting on me that was heating up, so I had to throw it in the seat next to me. That's how hot it is. So I think I had a couple of those days where my temperature gauge on the car said it was 104.
Yeah.
So now here in Tahlequah, we live in the bend of the river and everything. You get just a little bit less of the temperature, but not much, not much.
Yeah. You get up out of the valley from Tahlequah and it gets hotter.
Well, even down here though, like my wife, she has a pretty good sized little garden behind our house, and she can only go out there for maybe 10 or 15 minutes at a time. She has to come back in.
Yeah.
I mean, I just on the drive from the house to here, I get here and my shirt was sticking to me again. I was like, gotta go home and take another shower.
Yeah. After karate last night, I went into Walmart and my shirt was soaking wet and I stunk. And I thought, I don't really want to go to Walmart, but
Well, the main the main thing for tonight was the kind of bring into people's attention all these limits. Um, and I'm not sitting here telling them they're limiting themselves on this, they're limiting themselves on that. I'm telling them what I see that I have limited myself on in the past.
yeah.
They may or may not be limiting themselves in the same way. So if throughout this conversation that we have, like you said, we don't know who might be listening that needs it. Maybe nobody is, but maybe they know somebody who needs it, so they can share it with them or something like that. But um, when you start limiting yourself, now there's limits that we follow every day, just like you said. We got like speed limits that we have to follow. We have limitations to what we can do at work. Um, those types of things. We have the unavoidable limitations. Well, and the speed limit's really not an unavoidable limitation because we can break it. It's just that there's a consequence for breaking it. Um, but when it comes to limiting yourself on how much love you show others, how much kindness you show others, how much you forgive others, when it comes to those things, it really should be a limitless thing. I don't see, Jesus coming back in the flesh and then doing things like that. So, um, that's basically, and to me, I think that's basically a Free Will Baptist belief, as the not limiting yourselves on the kindness, love, gentleness, all the beatitudes and stuff like that. Whether we've thought about it in limits or not, I think that's what it is. So, and the Free Will Baptist was another it'll have to wait for another discussion. But I was talking to somebody who said that it's not really Protestant. It's one of the only ones that's not really Protestant. But the only thing I could find on it was the two guys that formed the Free Will Baptist Church came from Baptist church that were straight Protestant churches.
Well,
So I don't.
yeah. So the history of the church is there was some influence by. Okay, there's a lot history. So the Anabaptist came about before Protestantism. So we need to keep that as a separate group. And Smith and I don't know how to pronounce his name, but it's like Heels or Hiles or Hells or something like that. I don't know his name. Those are the two people that were Baptists. They had Anabaptist influence. They moved to where the Anabaptists were, and so there's some. And Smith is spelled Smyth, I think. So maybe it's Hewells. I forget the other guy's name.
But that was the Anabaptist.
They had Anabaptist um, influence, but they left. They went to the Anabaptist, but then they left and came back to England, and then
Okay, well
then they formed.
The Free Will Baptist actually started in the United States
Right,
under
but
Paul Palmer and Benjamin Randall.
right, but okay, but the Baptists
Right,
predate that, and they came out of the Baptist movement.
right.
So I'm saying that there was influence outside of what we would call Protestantism
So you could make
out
a
of
case
Luther.
either way that it is
There-
Protestant or
there's
that
an
it's not.
influence in there. It is Protestant. I mean, because when you think of it one way, you either have Catholics or you have Protestants,
Or
and-
Orthodox.
or Orthodox. So, and there's different branches of Orthodox. That's a whole different thing
Yeah, I think
too.
I was seeing there's 6 branches of
Yeah, we're getting
Orthodox.
way off subject, and
Going into denominations, that would
yeah.
denominations. That's that word that really messes with people.
Right, and most Baptists aren't a denomination in the strictest sense. We're voluntary associations, which is a little bit different.
Right.
It's not a hierarchical denomination.
Well, just for those that uses I know there's a lot of them that says that they don't go to church because Jesus didn't come to form denominations, he came to form a church. That's true. But there's also a spot in the Bible where it talks about us needing to be around like-minded people and fellowshipping with our brethren.
Right.
That's where denominations come from.
Yep.
If you've got a big group that can't agree on something,
It's just going to be strife
and you're never going to get any worshiping done. You're going to be bickering. You're going to be like the Democrats and the Republicans. Never get anything passed because you can't stop fighting with each other, or never get anything passed that does any good anyway. So, and notice I said both sides. Both sides are just as guilty of that.
yeah.
But that's where the denominations come from, is to avoid the bickering and stuff like that. This denomination goes over here to fellowship with like-minded brothers and sisters in Christ. This one goes over here to do the same. Yeah, they might have some slightly different practices here and
Right.
there, some slightly different church traditions, which hopefully they don't go as far as like what the Pharisees did and start holding the traditions above the church. But
Right, and we wouldn't have any problems like that at all if everyone would believe the Bible like I do, right?
I laugh, but I was sitting here thinking the same thing. I just didn't say it. No, we're not actually going to say that out loud to anybody. This is one of those churches where nobody's going to say nothing if you walk in with ripped up jeans, holes in them, whatever. Maybe you had a rough day and you didn't have a chance to clean up or anything like that, we're not going to say nothing. We're gonna invite you in. We're going to let you sit down. We're going to talk with you after, before and after. Uh, that's what it's about. It's about communication. It's about relationships. It's about um, being more like Christ. That's what a
Yeah.
Christian's supposed to be. A Christian's
Right.
supposed to be more like Christ. We're not supposed to, uh, I don't see Christ seeing somebody come through the church door on a Sunday morning in a pair of shorts and flip flops and saying, "Oh no, you can't be here."
I got tennis shoes on
I
today,
I got tennis shoes on. Uh,
but I do have shorts on.
yes. Uh, well, there's a lot of times I'll wear my cargo shorts to church, but I'm driving in an extremely hot car and it's just miserable.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't see Christ kicking someone out of church because of that.
Yeah.
He would have them come in, he would sit down and talk with them. And matter of fact, your son, he had that TikTok thing where he was doing while he was fishing, the fishing with the father thing that he was starting.
Yeah.
I guess it's been a while back now, he says, but he says something along those lines too, in one of those. So anyway, yeah, I know I've been kind of all over the place and not really too organized. I honestly had a lot more organization in mind before I sit down. And now I'm thinking, boy, as soon as I get home, I'm going to get me something to eat and I'm going to go to sleep. It's hot. It does get miserable.
Yep.
Hopefully tomorrow that gets fixed though, because I'm changing that part and hopefully I'll have air conditioning in my car again. I'm going to pray for that when I get home.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my mechanicking prayer. So,
You'll get it.
but anyway, do you have anything to add to any type of a limit or limit discussion or?
No.
And don't limit yourselves on Sundays. Come on out and see us.
Yeah.
Uh, we'd love to have you guys show up and have a conversation or two.
Yep.
You might even have a conversation with us that makes a little more sense than I sometimes make on here. I'm sure you'll have a conversation with me that makes a little more sense than what happens on here. So anyway, until next week, and I will be more organized next week. I will make sure I have everything together in my head. I might not have it together on here, but until then, God bless. Take care of one another out there. Quit limiting yourself, and we'll see you next week.